This video is going to show you some advanced scripting in Unity and how to make interactions occur. So right now we are using the familiar script over here that we've been using to run our game. I'll give you a quick preview of that. It's just essentially a little tank game. You run around in the world. You're trying to get over here to the box, and you're trying to avoid these red things. These are your traps. And what I've done is I've added in two boxes that we can now interact with. So just to give you an idea, we're just calling them Cube 1 and Cube 2. The first thing we want to do is we want to make something. Let's say that we want, when we bump into a cube, we want it to be able to make some sound and tell us that. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down here into our scripts file, and we are going to create new JavaScript, and let's call this the sound script. Okay. Now, if we go into our game file, into our game script, what we will notice as we scroll down here on the side, if we look carefully, is what we are using to determine most interactions here is vector3 distancing. So if open parens vector3 dot distance, if the distance between the body's position and the goal position is less than a certain amount, then we're going to do some things. So the first script that we're going to write here, we're going to open this up and we're going to create a very simple vector3 script, and I'll show you how to do it. It doesn't take that long to do, and then I'll show a different way of doing it which can actually be a little bit more efficient. So here we are into our new sound script that we just created, and what we're going to do is we're going to eliminate the function start. We don't need that. Just a quick delete there. We're going to leave the function update though, and we're going to start out by writing some script, and then we will get into putting in the variables. So the script that we want to create here is going to read basically if, so on the function update, every time you update the scene or refresh the scene 30 times a second, if vector3, if the three-way vector, our XYZ coordinates, if that distance between our object called body and its location, transform.position, and cube1.transform.position. We could say that. We don't need to though. So what we can do is we can just come in here and we can basically take this out. So what this is asking is the distance, the vector3 distance between our object called body and where we are right now, and we're going to give it a thing, is this less than, how about if we say 3? Okay, and we need to do a double parens here to close everything off, and we give it a curly brace. To do this, we're going to open a curly brace, so we're going to come down here and we are going to close a curly brace. If this is the case, if the vector3 distance between where we currently are and our body position is, if it's less than 3 meters, what we want you to do is we want it to play some sound. And so what we're going to do is we are going to say, the easiest thing I usually find is to give it audio.play clip at point, and then we want to come in here and we're going to have to call it, we can just call this sound clip, and that should be pretty good, and we have to end that with a semicolon. Okay, and so this is how you basically build this. Let's give it one more piece of information. Let's play this sound clip at the point where the cube is. So then we would put in a comma and we would go transform.position. Okay. Now we have a whole bunch of stuff here, and if we save this, we go Command S and we come back into Unity and we try and play this, we're going to get compiler errors. Of course we are. So we can look through our compiler errors. The first part is that we're asking it to deal with a whole bunch of stuff that it has no idea what it's dealing with. So first of all, we're asking it to deal with something called body, but we haven't told it what the body is. So we're going to go var body colon game object, tell it exactly what it is, and that with a semicolon. The second thing is it has no idea what this thing called sound clip is. So we need to go var sound clip colon, and this is going to be an audio clip semicolon, okay? And these two are going to show up in our inspector, and we'll have to assign them. So let's save this, and let's go back, and let's see if we can run it again. And we'll clear these out. It looks like it is still giving us a couple unexpected tokens here. So lines 8 and 9. Let's go look at lines 8 and 9 real quick. Line 8, vector 3 distance. Oh, whoops. I have too many parens in there. That'll certainly do it. And then 9. Oh, I see. I have an extra T. We've never heard of play clipped at point. We want play clip at point. And this is, you have to be very, very specific. And so you want to use the compiler warning, and you want to make sure that it is that you're paying attention to it. So now I've cleared all my problems. And so now if I play it, okay, we go along and doop-a-doo. I hit something, but nothing happens. Okay, this is to be expected. Again, so we're going to close this out. We're going to go look at cube 1. The first thing is we have not applied this script to anything. So right now, we're going to apply this to cube 1. This is the right-hand cube. You just simply grab and you drag onto just like you would any other thing if you're adding an animation or an audio. Now, in the sound script inspector, okay, we're in our inspector scene for cube 1. You'll see that it has these two variables, body and sound clip. We haven't applied either of these, so it has no idea what it's looking for. Easiest thing is to be on cube 1, click down, drag what we want to use as body, what we want it to identify as body, and the same thing with sound. So we're going to come over here to sound effects, and I'm just going to use this quick sound clip, and I'm going to drag it on there. Okay. Now, when we play, when we bonk into this thing, we should get to a point. Oh, that sounds really crazy. What is going on there? Well, this is one of the things about using a vector distance, is that it is measuring it 30 times a second. It's refreshing 30 times a second. And so when we play, if you look in the hierarchy over here, you'll see that it kind of starts going crazy. So it's just absolutely ridiculous. Now, there's a couple things that we can do here. The first one is play clip at point. So that's telling it every single time to do this. We could try a different version. We could try play one shot. Now, a one shot is not going to ask you for a position. So you have to eliminate the position. So let's see if that is able to help our situation here at all. Okay, looks like we don't have any compiler errors yet. Good. Run through this. Uh-oh, what just happened? Well, we went in and we changed the script, and now the script isn't so sure that it likes what it's doing. So, missing component exception, there's no audio source attached to the cube 1. Okay, so play clip at point allows you to identify the clip that you want to use. Play one shot requires that you attach an audio to the actual object. So we drag the audio on. Now we can manipulate the audio in the inspector down here on the right. We don't want it to play on awake. We don't want it to loop. We just want it to play one time. Let's try this and see how this works. We're still getting the same thing. Okay, so maybe vector 3 isn't exactly the way that we want to do this. Maybe vector 3, because every time it updates, it's trying to measure, and if it measures that it's within 3 meters, it's going to play. So let's go back into Unity, and let's be in our scripts, and let's create a new kind of script, and let's call this one on trigger. This gets a little bit more complicated, but it actually makes life a lot easier once you learn how to use on trigger. So here we go. We have a new script that we've opened up. And what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of pretty much all of this. We're going to leave the pragma strict. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to come down here and we're going to create a new function. And this one's going to be called onTriggerEnter. And each of those words has a capital letter to begin it, but it's all one word. So onTriggerEnter, open parens, other colon, collider, close parens, open curly brace. And we know when we open a curly brace, we need to close a curly brace. So what we're basically telling this is when you encounter a trigger, we want you to do the following. Now, I usually find the easiest thing to do, because there's a lot of moving pieces in onTrigger, the easiest thing to do is to simply tell it to destroy game object. Okay? That's all we want to do. And since we're telling it just to destroy this one thing, we just want it to be its own self there, destroy game object. Okay? And I'll show you why in just a second. This can get pretty confusing. We're still going to work on cube 1, and we're going to remove this old script. And we're going to come down here to onTrigger, and we're going to drag our onTrigger script on here. So now we have our onTrigger script on here. The way that onTrigger works is that onTrigger, on the box collider, one of the objects must have their box collider or their collider set to isTrigger. Now, the other thing, what's going to be running into it? It's going to be the body. Okay? The body has to have a collider of its own, and it has to have a rigid body. The easiest thing to do is to set the rigid body on the thing that is moving. You can adjust it, you can take off gravity, and you can set it to iskinematic. The rigid body makes it want to collide and bounce and things like that, react basically physically. If you set it to iskinematic, it will not react physically. So let's test this out now. We have a collider on each of our objects. We have a rigid body on the body, which is going to be moving. We come back to cube, and it is set as a trigger. And remember, all we're doing is we're just going to test destroy. Let's make sure that we have this all set up correctly. Will this truly destroy when we contact it? And there it goes. It is all gone. Okay. One other final note I'll show you about body using onTriggerEnter. If you're using ray casting as a means of detecting proximity to other objects, you need to make sure that your box collider or your collider is larger than your rays. Here, I'll change the viewpoint for just a second, and we'll come into body and we'll go on top of body. And when we play, when I press play, you'll see the ray casts coming out of the side and the front here. So here you go. Here are the ray casts. And you'll notice if I come back to body that the collider that I have set up on this object is actually larger than the ray cast. And the reason is that if the collider were to be smaller than these ray casts, it would hit the ray cast, and the ray cast would detect that there's something there and not allow it to continue. And we need to make sure that we have collider triggering collider. So that's the thing that we need to do. And we, just by using the very simple destroy play, we can very quickly determine that that is what's happening, because when we get close, we see, all right, let's go here. There's my box collider. We see that it's actually the two colliders that are triggering, because that is what is making it disappear. So we have everything set up correctly on the moving object and on the interactive object. So now we can go back into our script. We don't really want to destroy it. That's not actually what we're looking to do. What we want to do is we simply want to get that audio playing again. And because it's a one-time event, because it is happening one time, it's not a function update. It's not checking 30 times a second. It's checking one time to see if that's happened. We can just very simply go back to our audio dot play, if I can spell it right this time, clip at point, and we're going to just call that one sound clip again because it's nice and easy, and we'll put it on the exact same position where our cube is located, and we're going to close that off, And is there anything else that we want to do here? No, I don't really think so. So we've got our open curly brace, close curly brace. Oh, we do need to do a couple things though. One of them is we no longer need to provide information about the body because it doesn't care. It's just using triggers and colliders. We do need to give it this variable though. It does not know what sound clip is. So we're going to call it var sound clip colon, and this is an audio clip. And we go with the semicolon there to close it all out. We click save, and this will bring it up so that on our, when we go back to our cube and we look on our trigger, sometimes you have to play to make it really understand what it wants to be doing here. There we go. You see it just popped up here. Now we need to add this sound clip. And so we can add our sound clip over here. And now when we run and play, we should be able to get that nice collision and get a sound to play one time each and every time we run into the box. There's our sound. There's our sound over and over again. And we still have the audio on here. We can actually take that off. We don't even need it anymore. We can remove that component and the game will still play and it will still collide because we're using the box colliders. And because we've applied the sound to the script, it will continue to play and play at this point over and over and over again. So that is some advanced scripting for you in Unity. On trigger is a really nice way to manipulate and make things work. It's a little bit easier and better and faster than using a vector 3 trigger. And the reason is that if we apply this to 100 objects, we now have 100 objects every single update, every refresh, every 1/30th of a second, measuring, is this thing so far away? Is this thing so far away? Versus on trigger, it's just sitting there. It's just waiting for something to actually come into contact with it, at which point, once that thing comes into contact with it, then it actually does something. It's not checking until something comes into contact with it. So in terms of RAM and processing speed and bogging your game down, using something like on trigger is going to be much more efficient than using something like vector 3. Even if you're applying all of the triggers to the body object as opposed to the game object instead of the cube, if we were to put these on the body of the tank, it's still going to be much more efficient because it means that the computer is not checking for updates to see how far away it is from things. It's only happening when an event is triggered by that box collider. I hope you've enjoyed scripting, advanced scripting here, and I hope that you've learned quite a bit, and I look forward to making the next video for you.